All right. Welcome, everybody. I'm back. Sam Jacobs is back.
He's back.
The executive assistant to AJ Bruno. I've set up AJ's coffee. I've gotten his bunions removed from his feet. And
but my email, Sam, my email is building up. You literally haven't checked any of my email and responded to anything. And that's mostly because I won't let you do that. I wouldn't let you check my email.
I've drafted multiple responses. You know, you're an investor in 30 different startups. I've got 5 different new startups for you to invest in, for you to tell us about. Some of them are SpaceX. Anyway, it's episode 66, I believe, of Topline. I'm here with Asad and AJ, and we've got Dan Gottlieb. Dan is an analyst at Gartner. Dan was part of the Gartner Topo acquisition. Must be friends with Craig Rosenberg amongst a bunch of other people. Dan's dialing in from Tahoe, Nevada. It looks nice there. Welcome, Dan.
Thank you. Glad to be here. And as a fellow bunion guy, AJ, I see you. You know, it's tough out here on the streets. It's tough out here, you know. You get all uncomfortable when you go to the store to buy shoes.
Man, you're in the streets of Tahoe. I'm in the streets of Philly. Those are different streets, my friend.
I've seen AJ's feet, and they are so gnarly. I don't even want to. I don't want to touch AJ's feet.
Oh my goodness! All right, great start to episode 67 or whatever.
AJ's got he's got Benjamin Button syndrome, but just for his feet. His feet are the feet of the 9. He has Joe Biden's feet.
Oh god!
Oh my god!
Dude, my brother's got those feet. They run in the family. You know, my grandma had them. My cousin has them. My aunt has them. My brother and I have them. His were like uncomfortable. Like even the people with bunions were uncomfortable being near his feet.
I agree with that.
We were in the top 2% of all global listenership for this podcast before this episode. We're in the bottom 10% after this episode. That's where we were headed.
Welcome to Topline, the podcast for the best founders, operators, and investors in B2B tech. Every week, AJ Bruno, Asad Zaman, and me, Sam Jacobs, will break down what's important for you to know to be the most well-informed professionals in the market.
This episode of Topline was brought to you by Aircall, the business communications intelligence platform. With Aircall, you can bring your CRM and help desk together with your phone, chat, and messaging system to save time and resources on customer communications, admin, and reporting. To deliver even better customer service, visit Aircall, that's AIRCALL.io.
Okay, so let's jump in. We've got fun things to discuss. So Dan is joining us because Dan covers one of our favorite categories in tech, which is the sales tech category. And he specifically covers what we've been calling the go-to-market wars and the conversations we've had with David Obran from Salesloft and Kevin from Clary around what's happening in that category. That's the thing that Dan spends his day and night thinking and observing and talking and writing about. And so we're very excited to have Dan. Dan, maybe a jumping off question is that our observation is that in this category, a bunch of years ago, you had companies doing all sorts of different things. There were different categories, actually. And those companies were actually quite collaborative. Outreach and Gong were friends. I think they sponsored each other's events. So everybody got along. Everybody was doing their own thing. And then, if you look at it now, fast forward a couple of years, collaborators have become competitors. It seems like a lot of them have realized for them to be viable for the future, they have to provide a lot more value than they were providing before, which means solving more problems for similar buyers. That gets them into each other's airspace. Also, a lot of the things that they'd built initially became commoditized, and so they had to add on new things. And so now you've got a category where past friends are now competitive against each other. And it makes us really wonder that when you look out the next couple of years, the eventual winner of this category what do they need to do to become that winner? This has been a question we've asked a couple of the CEOs, and we'd love to start by asking you the same question.
What a question. What a soft, simple question to start this podcast. All right, so let's start with a little bit of the backstory. I remember it's April 2020. We're all sitting at home in our pajamas, underwear, whatever, and Outreach has their Unleash conference. They just pivoted to be virtual. And I remember Manny Medina, CEO of Outreach, stands up there and he's like, "Hey, everybody, I want to thank my gold sponsor, Gong." Round of applause. Now, as part of my big product keynote, I want to introduce Kaya, our conversation intelligence product. And I remember sitting there, looking around my apartment, being like, "Sorry, what? Did anybody else hear what I just heard?" And I had participated in a TAM analysis for a client a couple of years prior to that for sales tech. And there are a couple of huge assumptions that go into the models that we look at for potential growth of these markets. And of course, two of them are how many salespeople are there, and what are proxies for that? Well, how many Salesforce users are there out there? How many CRM customers out there? And what you realize is that the valuations of these technologies were largely based on how many selling the products to a very wide range of sales roles. And I think that in order to grow, these companies knew that early, and they had to figure out which capabilities they would add in to grow. And that has created what we call sales tech mayhem. It's sort of been our way to talk about this market with our clients because they come to us very confused.
If you decide to use our terminology of go-to-market wars, we'll be okay with that. But we like sales tech mayhem as well.
That shows up in a report at some point in the near future that we can reference on this podcast. We're okay with it.
Acknowledged, and likewise, by the way, that sentiment goes both ways. But in all seriousness, I think you see the same thing. And so, the question of who's gonna win, right? Or what do they need to do? You kind of need to understand, well, what's happening, coming together wise. And I think what we're observing is where's the market demand for these sort of larger, more monolithic, maybe a Megazord sales tech vendor. That's a reference to Power Rangers and the massive machine that they all turn into when they come together, right? Like the sales tech Megazord. And that's kind of what's going on right now.
We thought for a hot second, Graham wanted to name one of our product lines the Zords, and I vetoed that hardcore. I was like, get out of here, go home, don't come back to me, don't do that again.
Totally, and rightfully so. So what's the coming together look like? And what it looks like is it's not what's the value of buying 3 separate applications: sales engagement, conversation intelligence, pipe and forecast management, or revenue intelligence from one vendor. That's the wrong question. The question is, what's the net value add of using one vendor? Rather than the total, it's not a total cost of ownership story. The products aren't at parity enough to just say, man, they're good enough, so let's just consolidate. Actually, the change management to consolidate is really complicated, and is therefore sort of making it more difficult to just quickly pivot to use one vendor. So what it's turning into and what we're seeing is one vendor that's a consolidated sales activity model that is separate from my CRM, that is opinionated on the way we should be storing sales data so that we can use machine learning to actually get more value from that large data set. And so that net value add, generative AI entering the market has been this really interesting unlock, I think, for that promise. Because you're starting to see some really compelling features coming out of these vendors that are only possible when you have a consolidated sales activity model. And I think that's where our clients in Gartner, so I'm in a group called Gartner for Sales, and it's a lot of mid-size, large enterprise clients in non-sexy industries: manufacturing, financial services, healthcare, pharma, etc. And for them, this is about their first time buyers of this tech. And for them, they're sort of looking at this as part of their AI for sales initiative. So the companies, to land the plane, the companies that are going to sort of win, I would say, or come out in front, they're going to kind of do three things really well. The first is they're going to be able to sell this concept of a consolidated or a sales activity model to the CIO of a large enterprise, right? The second, and why it's better than what they're doing today, putting all the data in a data lake, for example, for the go-to-market team. The second thing they're going to be doing is they're going to use the AI actions, and they're going to figure out the optimal user experience where really well-paid, successful sales resource is going to feel comfortable collaborating with AI every day. I'm not talking about like just, this sort of simple next best action like send follow-up emails. I'm talking like more complex, like organize the team internally around this really specific deal point is a very logical next step in a deal, but very nuanced company to company. And then I think the third thing that they're going to do is they're going to be able to offer a really flexible approach to data interoperability. And so data interoperability is kind of like a simple term, big term, and I mean three things by that. The first thing is like workflow interoperability. So, what feels like one simple workflow is actually still using three different applications behind the scenes for a rep. That's really deep integration. And I think you can start to see some examples of that peeking through. A good example, I'll give you a simple one if you want, but a good example of that would be like, I know I need to multi-thread, and so the product automatically gathers data from a third-party data provider that I already have a subscription with and pulls that into my workflow. One click, I've kind of got all that done. The second thing that they're going to do really well is they're going to be able to allow you to configure machine learning insights using the product, because like the way I go to market is going to be different than the way, Pavilion goes to market or QuotaPath. And so, but I'm talking about like a data studio underneath the scenes that an everyday sales ops person can use. And then the last one is, if you do cool machine learning, you have all these cool inputs, I still want to be able to take it and pull it into my data center, into my data lake so that we can do our own analytics with your machine learning insights. And that's just meeting the needs of true like CIOs. So that's my vision.
One thing that's kind of wanted to get just clarity on from you, and you're talking a lot about like these big picture value things that are data studio, machine learning, AI, and the companies that figure those out are going to win. But then you mentioned earlier, like, these features or these features or these features. Like the thing that I hear with that is like these companies what I see is these companies are struggling to both pitch value of where they're headed, and in this consolidation play, they're lumping up all of these features. And what tends to happen in go-to-market is that the go-to-market teams are going to rely on these features to sell, and they're not selling the thing that they should be selling on the value side of it. So I'm like hearing two distinct different parts of this conversation when you're talking about, and you're not talking about any player in particular, but it's what I'm hearing. Is that like, does that resonate? Are you seeing that as well?
Yeah, definitely. So how's this? Let's talk about how this practically manifests, right? I have a client that is, the procurement team says, I'm looking down the barrel of a 2-year renewal of a conversation tool we're using to record calls. And it took me 30 seconds to realize that we already have 3 vendors that we have commitments to that also offer these capabilities. And so that individual is pulling in the IT biz ops person, the team in sales ops, that's sort of the key lead on the tech, and saying, hey, have you done your homework on these products? And in that regard, that individual is like, no, we haven't, because the way we're using it is serving our needs right now. And so, procurement is asking, where's the value in consolidating? Is there value in consolidating here? And so the value in the consolidation analysis isn't coming from some top-down monolithic, can't wait to see how it all works together story. It's coming up much more practically through renewal conversations and cycles to say, is it worth spending our time even figuring out the answer to the question, should we consolidate? And so it's like an industry in transition, and the transition is hyper messy. and everybody's like secondary capabilities are still going through puberty, so it's hard to ascertain. It's messy. Yeah, I hope that helps like explain where I'm living the reality today.
Dan, do you think here's what we've heard, and you probably have better information on this than we do, but there's been effectively a stall point for a lot of these companies, and the stall point seems to be around roughly like 200 million in ARR, which is they got there very quickly, and then at some point churn has overtaken their ability to grow, and we don't know we don't have the CFOs on the line for Topline, but we do get pretty good back channel information that there's a couple of these major companies that I'm sure you cover where they actually contracted in Q1, or at least their growth has hit a major wall. And we had David Obran, the CEO of Salesloft, on, and he made the point, which I feel like you may be making, which is that because you mentioned you're covering many of your clients are not in tech. They're in non-tech industries. They're in manufacturing. They're in CPG. They're in healthcare. They're in financial services. And so the point that David made was, you meaning one may think, a follower of Outreach may think that we're in the middle innings of Outreach's growth story. But really, if you zoom out and look at this overall category, we're really in the early innings because none of them have effectively penetrated the non-tech enterprise to the point of you talking to CIOs and heads of procurement at major Fortune 500, Fortune 1000 enterprises. And in that context, as long as they don't die, this 200 million stall point is not their death knell. It is merely a way station on the way to continuing to compound as many SaaS businesses do. And if they can just maintain their longevity, because as you said, their secondary features are still in adolescence or puberty, whatever, however we would want to characterize it, they're still, and coupled with their balance sheets, because they've all raised such tremendous amounts of capital, that there's no clear end, and it's not like we're going to see the winner to this category. David Obran said in the next 18 months. That doesn't sound right to me based on what you're saying, but I'd love your reaction to that. First of all, do you agree that we're still in the very, very early innings of the penetration of the true enterprise, which is a place that Salesforce has been for many, many years, but very few other tech companies have been in? And as a consequence of that, do you think that coupled with the balance sheets of Gong, Salesloft, Outreach, that we're still many years from really figuring out who is the ultimate consolidator and winner of this, broadly defined space?
I agree, Sam. I think that absolutely is what I'm experiencing right now. And what's funny is at Topo, we were very focused on high growth tech companies and what are the patterns and plays of what they do. And at Gartner, I've had to learn a lot of industries and their relationship with sales tech on the fly. And it's been fascinating because sometimes I can't take assumptions that when somebody says I want to generate pipeline, they mean I want to generate new logo pipeline, right? And sometimes when they ask about sales tech, I may have to ask, do you know what a cadence is? And so we laugh, right? It is funny to us.
It's so true, by the way, what you're saying. So we work with a number of non-tech enterprises, Honeywell, Harley-Davidson, Bosch, etc. And one of the questions when we're launching a project is, tell us about the tech stack that this person is going to have to be familiar with. And when you ask a tech company, they'll give you the nuanced things, right? Like something fancy that just came out, etc. And you ask these companies, they're like, we have Salesforce. Yeah. And they stop there. And then a really fancy one will be like, and we have Sales Navigator. And so
we have a soft phone. They dial in they don't actually go into the office. Did you know that?
WebEx. My favorite is WebEx. Anytime says, oh, here's this WebEx. I'm like, WebEx?
But what's fascinating there is what you guys are talking about, which is like, to them, this is all like cutting edge innovation versus how we think of it as commoditized and kind of over and done with. So it's interesting. Sorry for cutting you off.
Just the way we're having this conversation is evidence of what Sam is saying, right? Like these assumptions that we live with about what everyone knows about sales tech and its use is exactly kind of why there's still so much more growing to do. And, generative AI as actually, it's short-term painful for these companies, medium-term great for them, because a lot of what Gartner's role is in large enterprise tech buying is a safe space to learn quickly and collaborate to figure out what should I be exploring, right? And the pre-November 2022, a lot of those conversations were category based. We would come in, we would show them the hype cycle. I'd show them these honeycombs that we built to kind of explain the universe and the ecosystem and kind of talk through, oh, you have a key account strategy. Check out these kind of account planning tools. Oh, you've got, heavy outbound. Check out sales engagement. But all of those kinds of conversations with clients have pivoted. They're all, what should we be doing in AI for sales? And that has been like a tidal wave of the kind of inquiry that I get to ask about sales tech. And one of my friends actually overheard. I was doing a week like this, where I was working remote, and so some friends were there, and he overheard me use this quote saying that generative AI is resetting the shot clock for the sales tech market. And they all make fun of me for that, but I believe it because these large enterprise companies are now no longer looking at, the Outreach, Gong, Salesloft, Clarys of the world at a category level. They're looking at them at more of a AI for sales level, and that changes the way that we talk about or that they are evaluated and the way that they're purchased. It means that the technical, the CIO, data and analytics leadership teams are actually playing a much more active role in sales tech evaluations, even for the pilots. And it's been really compelling because it resets a lot of the go-to-market, like how does sales tech go to market? It's resetting, I think, a lot of how they're trying to represent themselves to these companies.
So it seems like there are two things going on over here, which is one is this is going to be one by breaking into other industries and enterprise customers for whom technology buying is a very different process to what we all think when we generate our first 10, 20, 50, 100 million selling to tech companies, right? Like the next couple of 100 million is going to be a very different type of fight than the first 100 million was. So it's going to be who figures that out, right? Like Salesloft signed up IBM, I think a couple of weeks before David joined the pod, and that was a huge deal, right? And it was one of the first few times a large enterprise of that sort had bought one of these things. The second is this AI part that you're talking about, which is we've got a system of record, which is Salesforce and HubSpot, depending on size of customer. And then you've got the system of engagement, which is one of these providers, right? On that, you're saying that these systems have to evolve into not just being the execution point for engagement, but actually the guiding point, right? They have to be the ones that say, hey, salesperson, do this next, and it'll have the highest probability of moving this deal forward. So when I hear that, I think of CRM adoption today. And it's not great, right? Like sales reps don't love using technology. They use some when they have to, but like sales reps don't adopt technology in some super early adopter type of way. They're very slow to it. So are they going to trust a piece of technology telling them what to do when they have been, and I'm talking about mid-market enterprise reps who've done it, been there, they're good at what they do. How are these companies going to get them to trust this insight, the action that is being told to them to follow through on? How are they going to solve that problem?
It's an epic question. And, the funny thing is that next best actions don't need to be some like incredibly artistic, never would have thought of that before tactic in order for it to be valuable. It's really just about elevating the floor. It's not about like breaking the roof off of the ceiling, right?
So we're not making our number one rep way better. We're making the bottom 30-40% better. Like that's the...
It's about actually making the user's life a little bit better. And that's the burden that these companies have to get over. And when you think about sales engagement applications, like those products did make the SDR's life significantly better, right? Like when you think about what it took in 2017 to multi-channel prospect, it was like this insane click path that everyone had to kind of evolve through, right? When you look at the like pipe and forecast tools, like they did make, when you talk to CROs about why they repeat buy, those products, they never talk about the features of the company. They talk about the culture they can run, a culture of accountability they can run through, more advanced pipe and forecast analytics, right? So there's this like, in order for any of these companies to get over the hurdle, they have to create a lot of value for the user, which is like kind of funny to say out loud. It's just it wasn't really true in enterprise software before.
But that gives an advantage.
That's my point, though.
Right? Sorry, AJ, just to finish this point, because I wanted to close this loop a little bit. It seems like then if we're looking at AI as the difference maker, one of the difference makers, then each of these companies sits on different sorts of data today, right? They're not all sitting on the same data, and data is really meaningful when it comes to AI. Gong has conversational data. I would say Gong has the better data out of the 3 or 4 companies in the space, right? So who has the better data today that can feed the system to figure out the right action is going to have a bit of an edge in this category war. Does that statement sound somewhat correct to you?
It's the chicken and egg. In order for me to deliver max value to you, you have to give me email data, call data, opportunity data, as many channels as I can pull in so that we can gather that intelligence for you. But we also have our own models that we've been using on sales data for a long time that can add value to you out of the gates, right? And that's basically what every sales tech vendor needs to accomplish in order to do really valuable work. But I actually think that these companies have been gathering multiple channels of data, maybe just not as intentionally as before. Mm-hmm. And that is why when you think about who's going to win, a CIO is going to be able to ascertain whether their approach to AI and data capture is, valuable enough relative to other competitors. And that's a whole new thing for these vendors to overcome. But to AJ, I think there's still this burden of like, what about the rep? Like, we still have to do something useful for the rep, right? All of this has to be useful for the rep in order for it to add value, to be worth the money, to be worth the effort. And I think that's the most exciting thing that we're kind of at the precipice of right now. I think generative AI is like already adding a lot of value in really small, subtle ways. Like it's not even in these vendors, just like how we do research. I'm always amazed at the unique ways that different folks have kind of adapted different Gen AI tools so quickly and organically. I think we're going to see more capabilities like that kind of built on top of these vendors.
While I think your point around the shot clock is true and valid, I don't necessarily see it as a good thing per se. And the reason for that is actually what you're talking to, and maybe you likewise. It feels a lot that similar to 2020, 21, where you have all of these things like we have to go build this capability. You're not doing the work to figure out what that capability truly needs to look like, and you're not actually adding the value to the rep in a way that actually is productizing it. And I think we go back to looking at these bigger players that you cover really closely, and I will go ahead and make the contrarian statement that none of those players are going to figure out what we're talking about today. And not saying they won't be successful outcomes, but they're not going to be the ones to actually figure it out. And the one to figure it out will be one of these players where the shot clock has reset and figured out. Now, here's why. I think they're in the middle. I think they're just squarely stuck in the middle. Like a HubSpot, who I work really closely with, is well positioned to actually figure this out, in my opinion. But they'll have some of these, like the Gong outreaches, Salesloft of the world will be focusing heavily, might figure it out on the enterprise because of what we're talking about, but are not going to figure out this like big, hairy problem in the AI guided selling bucket. It won't be them.
I love that. This is super fun. There's a whole other wrench here. Whole other wrench we haven't talked about.
Another wrench?
All right.
I thought I counted all the wrenches. There's only 3 wrenches on the table, Dan. You're saying there's another wrench?
There's another wrench, yeah. And it is that the like really big CRM companies. So let's just talk about Salesforce has basically said, I'm going to take all these categories. I'm going to build capabilities that support them. I'm going to bundle them up into a pretty attractive price, and I'm going to load it in with the features that folks want. And so they're actually just using their distribution to muscle their way in to being a preferred app. And I have clients that are saying, we already pay for sales engagement in Salesforce. We already pay for the Einstein conversation insights or whatever. So should we just like use that? And so that's forcing. Now the answer to the question is very complicated. There's a lot of different ways.
This is exactly the Microsoft Teams mechanism through which they killed Slack, right? Which is like, we'll just bundle in the thing that you just spent. We have billions of dollars, you have millions of dollars, and we'll bundle in the thing that you just spent 2 years developing for free and just make it part of our 7% annual price increase to the DoD or to, Cardinal Healthcare or whatever.
Yes, and Microsoft, with their Copilot product and their Copilot for Sales product, running the same play as they did with Microsoft Teams with Copilot, trying to make that as widely available as possible, reimagining very much so, what their sales tech strategy is in terms of which product they lead with and who can use it, right? Because it used to be, are you buying Dynamics or not, right? And that's a huge monolithic undertaking, investing in a new CRM. That it's an additional wrench. And let me tell you a story here. So I had a call with a true chief sales officer for an insurance company based in like the DC, Maryland, Virginia, Pennsylvania area, representing a large, insurance company we've all heard, just responsible for that region. And dialed into the call in between a customer call and an internal meeting with IT. And the question was, teach me about Microsoft Copilot in the next 20 minutes, as much as you can, because I'm about to go into a meeting with IT where they're going to tell me we should buy it. And so this is sort of an example of where the buying dynamics are changing the market, I think. And in this conversation, this guy didn't know any, where do we begin, right? And so I just told him a story about your underwriters. You work with underwriters; they're the sales engineers of your deals, right? Talking about the value of recording an internal call with the underwriters about a deal, and then summarizing the points for a rep to put into a deck or to a memo to send to the exec partners on the other side. He went bananas. He was like, "That's amazing. I've never even thought about how valuable that would be." And all he did was just talk about the most simple of capabilities applying to one use case to get him excited. And I think it's just an example of how much further we have to go, but these bigger companies, I think, are going to put pressure on the way that the companies we've been talking about, the Salesloft, Outreach, Gong, Clarys of the world, HubSpots of the world, approach their products.
Dan, as we're coming to time, but I have one last question for you, which is around acquisitions. The way, as you've been talking through this, I'm imagining, AJ and I were chatting last night, and I was telling them how I think Salesforce is due for a really big acquisition. He said Spiff was a recent acquisition, but Spiff doesn't really count in terms of meaningful acquisitions for a company of the size that Salesforce is, right?
They're not adaptable. They have no adaptability.
I don't want to go down that path right now and throw. This is a great question, Austin, but Stam, A+.
So you've got companies like Salesforce that every couple of years can absorb a multi-billion-dollar acquisition, right? HubSpot is of the size that they can also absorb big acquisitions. We previously were thinking, would there be acquisitions amongst these providers? But do you guys foresee a world in which one of these companies is actually acquired by a HubSpot, another one's acquired by Salesforce, and the fight is actually HubSpot and Salesforce for that dollar share or wallet share?
I mean, man. I want to be positives here, so I would say
be negative. We don't mind negativity.
We just want honesty, Dan.
Yeah.
So did Slack work out? Do we think Slack's worked out?
What a question. What do you think? I don't know the answer to that. What do you think?
Are more people talking about Salesforce and Slack, or are more people talking about like Teams and Copilot? Like are they talking about Einstein and Slack, or are they talking about? I don't know. I mean, I don't.
Don't be scared, Dan.
They got acquired, and that's kind of the last we've heard about it.
Right.
So here's what I'm saying. Salesforce doesn't look like it's getting better. It doesn't look like it's getting better, and so adding sales tech companies that are struggling with growth to the portfolio, I'm not sure that's like the move. I think that if anything, it would be bargain shopping. They'd be bargain hunting. On
the Spiff side, we did the math. It was 475 million, 375 cash, 27x multiple on that deal. So they're not buying in a bargain even in this market. Now, again, it's not the Tableau, it's not the Slack, it's not like what was the other company, Austin, that you said that hit like the
MuleSoft,
giant
like
MuleSoft?
Yeah.
Like it's not that size, but what sales tech companies? I mean, we are talking about the Gongs, Outreaches, Clarys of the world. Then at that point, being acquired.
It wouldn't be Clary, because Clary thinks that they want to be bigger than Salesforce. It would be Andy's going to keep building his own company. I think it would be a Gong or an Outreach or one of these type of companies. Like you can see Salesforce wanting to buy Gong. Like why not? I don't think Dan can comment on that, but I can see a world in which Salesforce is like.
He wants to. I see him over there. He's chomping at the bit.
I don't know. Can I offer a contrarian take
Sam.
here? Like, what are they buying them? What are they buying them for? Here's what I heard from what Dan just said. What I heard from what Dan just said is the simplest use case that we think is common to a large enterprise customer is mind-blowing. And the most commodity functional. We are sitting here comparing, Outreach's AI machine learning to Gong's AI machine learning, and be like, oh, well, Gong is 20% ahead of this, important race that everybody gives a crap about. And what I'm hearing is they don't actually care at all because all of it's totally amazing and brand new. They don't even know what a sequence is. They don't even know what a cadence is. They're like, wait a minute, you can program it so it sends another email after they send the first email? Wait a minute, if they've opened that email and then you send another email and then you send a LinkedIn connection request? What is this? 2350? Are we in the age of have we colonized Mars yet? And so that what I hear when I hear that is like nobody really cares. Like if Salesforce has even commodity level functionality, what do they need Gong for? But maybe I'm wrong.
True. It's a very fair point. It's a very fair point.
I think if they were to make an acquisition, it would be because the technology. It would be because they're buying the tech, not the company, and they believe that the tech can give them a competitive advantage in capturing data and making that data make their Einstein portfolio stronger. Like I think that would be really the most practical reason that they would acquire a sales tech company. But that's just my point of view. And yeah, we could talk about this for hours.
We will have you back to keep talking about this. This was fascinating, Dan.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah, thank you, Dan.
Yeah, this was great. Like we love this topic. We love this category. We love that you cover it. We'd love to keep an eye on this category. We're going to have the CEOs of the other two companies we haven't interviewed back, and then maybe you can jump in after that to help us analyze the takeaways.
One last question, Dan. I know that you're feel a little uncomfortable commenting, but in terms of who's the biggest jerk, who do you think the biggest jerk is?
Oh man!
In terms of Manny, who do you think smells worse, Amit Bendoff, CEO of Gong, or Manny Medina? Do you think they smell bad? Who do you think smells worse?
I can't answer that question. But
I'm just playing with you. I'm just playing with you.
That's epic. Sam, I'm wearing Crocs right now. I also just wanted to let you know that. That was
yeah, but you're not out in public. The point isn't that you're wearing Crocs. It's that you're not parading around on the city streets of San Francisco. You're in your private residence where you can maximize for comfort, and I support that decision.
Thank you. I knew that you were a pluralist individual. I appreciate that. Thanks for having me on, guys. It was great to connect and talk a little shop, and I look forward to spending more time together.
Thanks, Dan.
Happy to have you in the family.
And now, a word from our sponsors.
Are you ready to revolutionize the way your team goes to market? Join us from October 14th to 16th in Austin, Texas for GTM 2024, the premier B2B SaaS conference where the world's top go-to-market executives learn, plan, and execute strategies that fuel growth. Expect 3 days packed with interactive sessions and panels addressing top-of-mind challenges, hands-on planning and forecasting workshops for 2025, and of course, plenty of networking opportunities. Whether you come alone or bring your entire leadership team, you'll find valuable insights and dedicated time to prepare for the year ahead. And be sure to stick around Austin for GTM 2024 awards, celebrating the top leaders in our industry. Ready to get a line and get ahead? Visit joinpavilion.com/GTM 2024 and use the code Topline for 15% off your ticket. Details are in the show notes. Hope to see you in Austin.
We're back.
We're back.
Thoughts?
We're back.
Sam, you made such an interesting point at the end.
I made a few great points. I feel great about my
But that was
contribution.
really good. Like, you're right. Like, we're like talking about the nuances and the fanciness of this tech, and actually, like, people are excited by open rates. I think that was a really good point.
Oh, well, thank you. After the negative, the ad hominem attacks that I suffered in my absence on the Bob
You
Moore.
are there were literally 0 attacks. They were all.
Did you know AJ was so vindictive? Like, he didn't just come back with pages. He remembered for like the moment.
God,
when
of course I know. Of course I know. I know all. I've analyzed AJ's psyche to the.
This was very like tech CEO AJ. Like, I appreciated learning that. About it.
You guys say this, but then I'm writing my notes on like Coaster right now for this episode.
Man, that's such a great roaster. Why don't we have these roasters?
I don't know. I don't even. Is that something Ange made you again?
No, my brother did. Which, by the way, he said it said the word adaptable 67 times on the episode. So he wins a free year of QuotaPath. No, you told him what he was getting. He's getting a free year of QuotaPath. You were the one that was literally like.
I also think he's getting $10,000 in cash in unmarked bills.
Yeah, he keeps asking about that from Sam specifically. He keeps asking about that. So
what do we think about that conversation? I think it's really interesting. What do you guys think about? Here's my question. You know, we talk about these stall points about these companies hitting these growth walls. Do you think it's just if we zoom out over 10 years, this is just a blip and they'll continue to grow again, they'll regain their momentum? I think it's really interesting that effectively, you know, none of them have really, I mean, maybe Salesloft, but I don't know, but none of them have penetrated the enterprise to the extent that Salesforce has. What do you both think?
We work with a lot of these enterprise companies, and none of them have even heard of these. Like, the people that we talk to don't use these technologies. So you're right. Like, there's a lot of market to be found. Salesforce is, when you think of enterprise, you think of ServiceNow and you think of Salesforce. Salesforce does $35 billion in revenue. The majority of it comes from all these other industries, right? So these companies are stuck at 100, 200, 300 million. The one of them that takes off and like becomes the large number one in this category and the number two, they will gain a lot of the market share in the enterprise. So that part makes a lot of sense to me. And that's why I always think that Salesloft is interesting to me, because they brought in a person as a CEO who's an expert at that. And he got them IBM, right? And so Salesloft gets a bit of an edge in this because of that. But I also think that this AI part is not a non-consideration in this category. Well, I think those are the two angles to this. One will be the enterprise and who can figure out how to convince large enterprises as well as other industries, mid-market companies in manufacturing and CPG and all these places. And the other one is who's going to figure out their AI and make it really effective. Because I do think that while the user might be surprised by open rates, I think the buyers are trying to see which tech can we buy where we say we are AI first or AI forward, and whoever can position themselves really well there will benefit. So it'll be both of those things matter, I think. AJ, what do you think?
I'm going to stick to I don't think it's any of those three. I think in the short term.
So who do you think it is? Like, who do you think HubSpot is going to win this? HubSpot doesn't even sell into the enterprise. HubSpot is like the most SMB company in the world. Like, what are they going to figure out in the enterprise?
AJ, is your point that these companies are betwixt in between, and that it's either going to be a super large player or it's going to be a tiny startup in a different sense of the word, but like a tardy upstart, is it your point that they're just big enough that they're not flexible or adaptable enough, but they're not big enough to dominate the enterprise?
I think it's that they've spent the last 5 years consolidating and acquiring and making themselves a commodity in their own space. And by doing so, they've created a sales tech world that is around the cost efficiency, but isn't around think about the things that they're doing. What value outside of the like original value of conversational intelligence or sales engagement or forecasting are they truly any of those bringing to the table? And all three of them are doing those things. And now they're being asked to do AI, and they're having customers coming to them. I think Salesloft, I agree with Asid's point on the enterprise, is like they have customers coming to them like, fix the AI point. My point is exactly what you just said, Sam, is that they're tweeners right now. And it's ridiculous to think it's like $200 million company. It feels like sour grapes saying it. But I just think they have this innovator's dilemma that has just challenged them that, the Salesforce of the 2000s could overcome. HubSpot overcame it from a horizontal aspect of it, but they have a ton of execution risk. Like sales, the point that Dan made, or one of you made, around Salesforce buying tech is exactly what HubSpot has done. They've only bought for tech. They bought Clearbit for tech. They bought PieSync for tech. They would never, I don't know this to be true at all. It would be really against what they've done for them to go buy a company, and maybe they're not big enough to buy a company, but maybe they do, like, hey, we're going to roll up Gong. I don't know.
Your point is they don't need the revenue. They're not buying for the customers. They're not buying for the leadership team. They're like, if the tech's not interesting, then I'm not, that's the point that Dan made. He's like, if the tech's not, if it doesn't enhance our data aggregation and collection capabilities, if we can't build a better AI model from buying this tech, then I don't really need it, because I don't need the commodity features that these companies have all appended in their own little way, where Gong has, added Gong Engage or whatever it's called, and outreach is
it's 100%. So if Salesforce or HubSpot or these companies that could conceivably buy Gongs, who's buying Gong? Are they going public in 6 months to a year? Like, what?
No, Gong is not going public. Well, that was my question. I don't. The only thing. I think two things. First of all, I think this is Asid's point, right? Isn't the most interesting data set Gong's data set?
Yeah.
Isn't the most interesting 100%. Thing the unstructured data of voice more than like email data? Because you can get email data kind of anywhere. So that would make, to me, now they all have voice and data at this point, but Gong has more of it. And I from what I understand, that
and longer. They've had it for longer as well, right?
So I think that might be one reason. But on the other hand, you're like, well, who's going public in 6 months? The answer is none of them.
None of them.
But I just think it's interesting to compare the revenue footprint to what we're saying, right? Like $200 million to whatever Salesforce is of what, $30 billion? What's Salesforce's revenue?
$35 billion.
That's their revenue?
Yeah, dude.
Yeah.
That is that's insane. The difference in scale is insane.
Somebody from Salesforce was trying to tell me that they can have a bigger impact on the world. Literally, the example was moving to Gong in a sales leadership role. And I was like, 1 second. Both are great companies, sure. But the one that has an economic impact on this world is Salesforce. It's $35 billion in revenue. If tomorrow Salesforce just disappears, the world stops a little bit, right? Tomorrow if Gong disappears, nothing changes. Like Salesforce is a big part of this world now.
How do we well, that's to the point of like who goes public. How do we explain that delta? That is what's interesting to me. Like there's somewhere, Gong and Outreach and Salesloft, and maybe like again, like if Amit or Udi were on here, they're like, well, no, we actually grew 10% last quarter. The point is none of them are.
But they're not on here, so we're just going to tell you what they're going to say if they were on here, Sam.
Okay. We know they didn't roll.
We know them.
We know what they're going to. They're so predictable. Well, they're going to talk their book. I think we can all agree we'd all talk our book. The point is, the gap between 200 million and 35 billion is so freaking wide, and I don't know how to explain it. except to say that we cannot write the obituary for Gong Outreach or Salesloft or Clary or Apollo or ZoomInfo anytime soon, because now you can say, well, no. I mean, or you could say, maybe you would say system of record is that much bigger than system of engagement. Maybe you say that, but that doesn't, something feels off about that scale so much that I still got to be, maybe I'm coming back around to just being bullish on these companies. Maybe just like they got to stick around, manage their balance sheet. They're not going public next year. And if they have the weird cap tables or crappy boards, then that sucks for them. But if they can manage their board and their balance sheet, maybe it's just a 20-year game.
Well, the question ends up being is, can system of intelligence, the AI, be bigger than either of those or both of those together? Like, that's the $1 trillion question, is can AI be bigger than system of record from a TAM perspective?
That's a really interesting angle to it, right? Like, so there is system of record, and you've got two incumbents there. You've got Salesforce, that is mid-market enterprise. You've got HubSpot, that's SMB, right? Like, so you've got the players there that own most of the market. When it comes to this other part of the world, I think what's going to happen is there will be one company that you can see take off, right? Because Sam, when you think of going public, 200 million in revenue is one thing. You have to be able to envision this company keeps growing in the public. No one wants to go public and then you're done, right? So it's like, can they get to $1 billion in revenue? Can they get to 10 billion in revenue? Those are the two major milestones when you're going public as a tech company. Is there $1 billion in revenue for them? Is there 10 billion in revenue for them? And there might be $1 billion in revenue or more for one of these companies to go and take. That would be interesting. That could be that the eventual company that gets there by being that intelligence layer on top of the system of record. I just find it really difficult to count out Salesforce and HubSpot when it comes to the system of intelligence and the AI actions part. Like, I can see these companies, you can't discount Salesforce just because they had one quarter growing at like less than 10%. Like, these are companies that know how to acquire, they know how to build, and they have distribution advantages. And so maybe what will happen is you'll have a bunch of companies that are at the couple of $100 million range, but the real winners will be the big ones because they have the distribution advantage that in this war is actually really meaningful.
I mean, if I'm a CIO, if I'm one of these people that's managing very large budgets at a large insurance company, I can see the value of consolidation, but I can also see the risk. I don't know that I want to put all of my eggs in one basket. I don't want to just rely on Salesforce for everything. I kind of want there to be a little bit of a competition between 2 to 3 very, very large players that are bidding against each other, that all have, complementary tech, where none of them is determining the entire fate of my organization, which is, I'd want there to be a vibrant, I don't want Salesforce to be the only game in town. I want one of these companies. I want Gong or Salesloft to win. At least I want them to stick around. I certainly think, by the way, that, go ahead, AJ.
Well, there's areas in your life though that you don't agree with that. I mean, you're Apple, right? How many Apple products do we have that we just like ultimately bundle up and they all communicate and talk to each other, and it makes our life like a million times easier because of that? So
but I think the consumer world and the enterprise world are probably different, because I think you're taking.
That was my question. Is there a major difference between the consumer and enterprise?
I think the thing that makes it really hard for these CIOs to get over the advantages of diversification of risk across various platforms is just the price point. Like, this is the cool thing about Microsoft, because they're the ones who really figured out bundling before anyone else. And it's been the driving force behind their growth over the last 10, 20 years. And Salesforce has similar abilities to bundle things and say you get sales commission software for free. It might not be for free, but it'll look like it's for free. And you'll take a B player over an A player if it seems free. And then the price of the bundle goes up. That's what you were talking about, Sam, and what the all-in people spoke about a couple of episodes ago. And it's really...
Well, they take their inspiration from us. They're all big Topline listeners.
Yeah.
I just, we talk. I think I heard AJ talk about this last week, we talk about who gets rich. Is it and rich is only a proxy for success. I'm not talking about distilling our lives down to material possessions. I'm just saying, is it the acquirer or the acquired? Is it Salesforce or is it Pardot or Exact Target or whatever it is? And so where do I come out on it? Some part of me comes out on like, okay, the CEO that has the longest time horizon has a chance. You still have a chance. If you need something to happen tomorrow, if Slack needs for whatever reason, they just felt like, I from what I can understand, Stuart and the team felt like, we're not going to win. We can't win. It's over. We need to be part of Salesforce. But if you have a strong enough balance sheet and you have a long enough time horizon, you can just say, it's still recurring revenue. We still have over 100% net revenue retention. We're not growing as fast as we wanted to be. We also just hit the worst tech recession and contraction of the last 20 years. We can live to fight another day. And I'm not building Gong or Outreach or Salesloft for, whether or not we go public, the company will not end in 2026 or 2027. I want this company to be around till 2045, which is when, Kurzweil predicted the singularity. And that's when the AI will shut down the power grid. And that's when Skynet will take over. And I will offer up AJ to our overlords and say, AJ was the one that questioned you, dear gods of AI. I'm the innocent one. Save me.
That is not... For the record, every time I talk to ChatGPT, I'd say thank you and please.
Oh my God, Roku's basilisk. It's not going to kill you. But my point
your point, Sam.
Yeah, go ahead.
NVIDIA took 30 years to get to $1 trillion in valuation. We wrote about this in the newsletter, actually. 30 years to get to $1 trillion market cap. Then 10 months to get from there to get to $2 trillion, and then 110 days to get to $3 trillion. That was their trajectory.
I've been reading The Psychology of Money. Have you guys read this?
Yeah, I just bought it, actually. It's right there.
I know why you bought it. I bought it for the same reason. I said, John Mark Shaw. And the whole point of it is compounding. The whole point of it is stick around long enough, wait for compounding to take effect. Compounding doesn't happen every day. It happens in spurts, which is what I've said, previously, which is most days nothing happens. A few days, everything happens. The reason you need to be in the market is to be around in those days where everything happens, because you can't predict it. If you I was looking at the growth rate of Topline listeners, because we feel it's like, we've flattened out. I'm like, if you zoom out and you look at the curve, it's actually logarithmic. Yeah. We can't see it. The growth of human intelligence is logarithmic. The growth of technology is logarithmic. When you're zoomed in on the electron microscope at the very, very granular level, nothing feels logarithmic. Everything can feel flat. But when you zoom out, you look at it, and the slope of the curve becomes nearly vertical if you just have the right time horizon. And that's where I just feel like maybe all of this questioning of, maybe just one of these companies needs a CEO that's like, it's going to take 20 years and we're not going anywhere. Yeah. And we're going to buy, I'm going to buy Salesloft. I'm going to buy Gong. I'm Outreach. I'm buying Gong. How are you going to do it? I'm going to use leverage. I'm going to use the fact that Amit's tired. I'm going to buy Gong. I'm going to be the one that survives.
I got this. Yeah. I think that part is really, I resonate with that. I think as long as people are in field and trying, over time, there are things that can happen that unlock things you can't think of today, like inflection points, right? Like 2 years ago, Gen AI wasn't a thing, and now it's part of what an insurance company is thinking about when buying a piece of technology that they didn't even know. They didn't know call intelligence was a thing 3 years ago, and now they're thinking of like AI tech. So like inflection points are really interesting. You got to be in the field and you got to be doing things for that. It'd be really interesting to see which one of these companies ends up taking off, or if all of them are just building features that eventually get integrated into HubSpot and Salesforce. I think that's the journey. Is like, is there another big company here? One, it seems like, or in 10 years from now, we're talking about these companies that used to be, but are now like Slack is, which is part of Salesforce and part of HubSpot. I think that's the journey.
Is it time for shout outs? This was a great conversation. One of the last point I'll make about this book, because I'm just thinking about it. Apparently, I think if Warren Buffett's worth 86 million, I think 84 million, a billion of his 86 billion net worth came after he was 65.
Isn't that wild?
That is wild.
Yeah, that's crazy. That thing blew my mind.
Compounding, everybody. Just don't retire. Don't retire. Stick around.
Yeah, just don't do it.
Keep walking at it.
Sam, I was talking to Asid, and he was like, yeah, you and Sam, I'm going to be the CEO of STA forever, and you and Sam are getting stir crazy. I was like, we're not getting stir crazy.
I'm settling in, baby. I'm settling in.
I was asking AJ, I was like, okay, so what's your plan afterwards? And so it's like, I don't know, we'll figure it out. I was like, you're going to get really bored of being retired. Like, AJ is not going to be a fun retired person like years now.
Well, he's going
to start another company. He's already said he's going to start another company.
Sam, this was after I blew 2 tires in my car yesterday, so I was a little bit over it yesterday. But you know why I blew 2 tires?
You blew 2 tires, and you're blaming that on entrepreneurship?
Yeah. No, I am. Yeah.
It's actually true.
So I was in my car, and I was on a reference call for a role that we're hiring. And in my area, it's notoriously known that we don't have good cell coverage. I know that is shocking to you guys. I get it. It's really crazy that in this area we don't have cell coverage. But I know the areas where we don't have good cell coverage. So, like, for example, yesterday I was talking to Asid, and I purposely drove a mile out of my way so I could talk to him and actually have a conversation with him. And during this call, when I was in my car, I missed the turn where there was going to be good cell coverage. So I was going down the road.
This is just friendship, though. This is not related to entrepreneurship.
No, the story comes together. Relax. Stop rushing me. So I'm driving in my car. I'm on this reference call, and the pavement is uneven. They were churning up the road to build a nice road. The other side of the road had nice pavement, so I went around 2 manhole covers that were sticking up 2 inches. That's like 20 centimeters for you, Asid, I think. I don't know what that is in the metric conversion. So I go on the other side, and then I go back, but I'm cutting out for the reference. And there's a car coming on the nice side of the pave, so I sped up a little bit to get to where I knew there was going to be cell coverage. So I went over the manhole covers and blew out both tires immediately, and then got stopped. And the kick of it is the person that I was doing the kick is that the person that was doing the reference call sent me an email right at that point and declined our offer.
Oh. And then the person
you're like, that's it. I'm selling Quota Path for pennies on the dollar. This is stupid.
But then the person who was doing the reference also then offered themselves up for employment in the midst of all of
they just got laid off. Yeah, they said they just got laid off, and they're doing consulting, and they asked if they could be our fractional CMO of our company. So tech, that is just a microcosm for what we are all living through in 2024 in tech.
Sam doesn't appreciate this.
I just want to make one last comment before we go to shout outs and winners of the week. If I had told you this story and I had said that the thrust of it was that I was on a private conversation with Asid, you would have been so upset. You would have felt so excluded. You would have felt so excluded.
Oh my goodness.
You don't even care about me. I take a few trips to Europe. You don't even call. You don't care.
This was a whole scheming conversation.
You used to care about me, not anymore.
Oh,
let's do this. I want to go watch the second half of this game that's going on.
Absolutely. Didn't it just start?
Well, it's they just hit halftime. It's 2-1, 2 for Spain, 1 for France.
Oh, it's France, Spain. Oh, and then when is England, Netherlands?
Tomorrow.
It is tomorrow. You're right. Oh shit.
Right.
2-1.
Yeah.
I want France to win. All right. Yeah, we got to go. Okay. Shout outs, wins of the week. I'll go first. I got some. I want to shout out a few people. I've been involved more intimately with the chapters in Pavilion of late. And I had our first Pavilion Salon dinner in Paris at the top of the Pompidou. Sebastian Daoun organized that. It was incredible. Some great people. Charles was there. Roxy was there from L'Empire. A few other incredible people. But so first of all, Sebastian, thanks for putting on a great event, and the Paris Pavilion community is ramping. Then I went to Dublin, and we just had a great event in Dublin. Pavilion Ireland, the Ireland chapter has grown about 70% so far in 2024. Incredible leadership from Dave O'Mahony and Emer O'Halloran and Sophie Doyle. And Danielle McConville. And it was just a great event. And I got to see Brian O'Reilly, who's one of the founding members of Revenue Collective, who now runs EMEA. He's the GM of EMEA for Writer.com or Writer AI, whatever. And he helped sell SmartLang to private equity, and then was at another company called Medio. And then I came to London and I spoke at the ELG conference, and I saw Bob and I saw Simon from Reveal, and I saw Dimitar, and I also got to see Tom Glasson, and Tom and I caught up. Tom and I have been working together since 2018. Yeah. 6 years. The average tenure of a go-to-market executive is 18 months. And I've made it 6 years with him, with Butch Langlois from Toronto, with Joshua Amrani from San Francisco and the Bay Area leadership, with Andre Brissell from Amsterdam. So I just want to give a shout out to the people that are building communities all over the world for Pavilion. It's really an incredible honor to be part of this journey with you. We're going to make them even better. I got to meet the chapter heads from Munich today, and we're built. Zach Groper's here from Barcelona, my future chapter head. So I'm just really excited about the communities that we're building all over the world with Pavilion, and I want to thank all of the chapter heads that have played such an important part in our growth. Thank you.
Wow. That's a
great shout out. That might be the best shout out that anyone's ever given.
The best one is anytime you mention your wife, AJ. That is always the best shout out.
Yeah, that's true. But Sam spent his entire week prepping because he missed last week's episode for his shout out. So he was just
on fire
over there.
Let me do one because mine's going to be a little bit wishy-washy. It's going to be softer than Sam's. AJ, you can end it. I think one of the goals we have with Topline is to use this platform to highlight some of the individuals in our slice of the world and go-to-market in the tech side of go-to-market who are just gangsters who are doing really cool things. And there's an individual who I met at the CRO Summit. Sam reintroduced me to him recently. His name is Robert Lopez.
Oh, right.
And he's the CRO at Just Words, multi-billion-dollar company. I want to highlight him because Mark Roberge wrote a book because he was one of the rare guys that took a company from no revenue to 100 million. This guy has taken a company from pre-revenue to almost $500 million. And there are actually quite a few of these guys who have broken the ceiling, I guess, when it comes to stage appropriateness. Like, I deal with it as a recruitment agency. The amount of calls we get where people just think the new stage is coming and it's time to make a move without even giving leaders a shot at showing themselves to be the right fit for the next stage. Some can be, some can't. Not everyone can perform at different stages, but when somebody can do it across such a wide revenue range, it is nothing short of exceptional. So he's a gangster, and people should go follow him and talk to him and reach out to him.
AJ.
That's a great shout out. Good shout out. I'm going to give a shout out to a partner that I've been working with for the last over a year. His name's Alex Buckles. He's the CEO of Forecastable. Alex spoke on a panel. I actually met him at the CEO Summit last year in Miami, Sam. He spoke on the partnership panel. And we've been working with Alex for the last year and a half on some awesome stuff. And at first, I was very skeptical of the work with him. And as of the last week, he's unlocked some great things. And just want to say thank you, Alex, to all the great work you're doing with us.
Thank you, Alex.
There we go.
Asad needs to go watch the football.
Yeah, I know. He just jumped off, so he's like, AJ, screw your shout out. I'm good.
No, that was me. I messed it up. I hit him. I was tired of looking at his stupid face.
For some reason.
Thanks for listening to Topline. It's good to be back, everybody. Thanks for all your fan mail. I know everybody wrote in and said, hey, it's not the same without Sam. I agree with you. And they said everybody else was really rude to me, and they apologized that nobody was nice to me and didn't love me anymore, but they still love me. So thank you. I love you too. Bye-bye. Open Asad's newsletter. The Topline newsletter is really quite good.
Yeah. Many thousands are reading it now, and it's a lot of fun.
It's awesome. All right. Bye.
This episode was brought to you by AirCall, the business communications intelligence platform. Deliver a better experience for your customers and your teams at AirCall. That's AIRCALL.io. Save time, save money, and improve performance with a single communications platform.
Thanks for listening to Topline. New episodes come out every Sunday. If you like what you heard today, subscribe so you never miss an episode, leave a 5-star review, and share it with your friends. Don't forget to join our Topline Slack channel to connect with us and discuss the topics we cover with other listeners. Click the link in the show notes. Lastly, if you're interested in joining Pavilion, you can learn more about membership at joinpavilion.com/membership. Thanks again for listening.